Everybody, welcome back to the Beyond the Peloton podcast. I'm Spencer Martin from the Beyond the Peloton newsletter. I'm here with my co-host Andrew Vontz from the Choose the Hard Way podcast, betterlab.io. We're back from our sabbatical. I think the last time we spoke, Andrew, I was in an apartment in Nice at the end of the Tour de France. It feels like that was a lifetime ago. We've missed so much. Kristen Faulkner, our very, very, very good friend and recurring podcast guest, who won the Olympic gold medal in the road race and then again in the team pursuit on the track, which is wild. Jennifer Valente winning now multiple individual track medals for the U.S. Gold medals, the only woman to ever win a track individual gold medal, which is wild, as well as a few other races in the upcoming Vuelta España. But before we get into it, do you want to talk about the Better Lab before we get going?
Yeah, if you're a human and you sleep and you're interested in a free way to amplify your health, wellness, and performance, well, sleep is the way to do it. And the Better Lab helps you mindfully build science-backed practices to sleep better that stick. You can check it out now. It's in the Apple App Store for free. And we've got V4 of our beta out next week. Thanks to all the Beyond the Peloton listeners who've checked it out and have been part of our research as we continue to improve the app. So please give it a look. And also, Spencer, you may have noticed I just re-released our episode of Choose the Hard Way with Kristen Faulkner. It's doing big numbers. There are a lot of people out there looking for that Faulkner content right now. So it's out now. Go find it. Choose the Hard Way everywhere you listen.
Yeah, no, I was joking about her being a very good friend, but it is wild that
I was just DMing with her right before this podcast.
We got a line. It is wild. So just to give people perspective on this, I think it was 2021, like winter or early spring 2021. I get an inbound message, and I used to have, it was a little silly, debatable if I ever should have done it. You could buy a spot on the Beyond the Peloton podcast, which you're really not supposed to do. Like in the big J's would not like this. She bought it, came on the podcast. I didn't know I had to look up. I was like, oh, she's on Tipco. Interesting. Not much of a palmares. And then on the podcast, I found out her story that she was a venture capitalist, went to Harvard, venture capitalist, started riding her bike in Central Park. I think it was like 2 years or a year and a half before she was on Beyond the Peloton podcast the first time. She wanted to be on the Olympic team. She didn't know how to get on the Olympic team, was asking if I knew people that could help her get on the Olympic team. Didn't go anywhere. She couldn't get on for 2021. Now she's a gold medalist in the road race in 2024. Just a wild last few years. And it is really surreal having known her when she was on a second or third division women's team to then watch her get better and better. As though Jonathan Kaplan pointed out, our friend, I think if you go through step by step, she is like one of the elite engines in the women's world tour. And just a few things have kind of obscured that, where she's had like bad injury luck, getting hit by a car, disqualification from Strade Bianche, which if you go back and watch that race, I think that was 2 years ago at this point, really an impressive performance, and shows that she was probably as strong as Kopecky and Vollering. She just was out there for longer and then had the bad luck of having two of the strongest riders in the race team up, be on the same team and chase her down. So super cool to watch. It was really surreal.
Yeah, I know we're going to talk about the Olympics a little bit, but to speak to her world-class engine, team pursuit is one of the most technical and precise disciplines in all of cycling. And Kristen was on the team that won the Olympic gold in team pursuit. And if you watch that race, there are two moments when a gap opens in front of her and she closes the gap, which it's just like almost impossible to do in the context of how fast they're moving as a team in the team pursuit. So she, given that she's relatively new to professional cycling and to track cycling specifically, doesn't have the technical ins and outs or capacity of some of these athletes like Team GB that have been doing it since they were 7 years old. But her ability to close those gaps that she inadvertently let open was mind-blowing to me. It was incredible.
I think it was her first track race, the Olympics.
Yeah, not
crazy.
Bad.
That's not bad. As you say, super technical. I believe it was also the first gold medal for the U.S. in the team pursuit ever. I thought it was a little they were blowing out. What was it? The Australian team? I'm already forgetting. But
yeah,
the coach had them going for the world record. And it's like, in retrospect, a little aggressive because gaps opened up. They've really managed that well. I think the one that opened it was Volente, who is the most, she's a double individual gold medal on the track. So clearly, and she's been racing on the track her whole career. So probably just a little bit of differences in technical skill there. But I thought that was a little aggressive from the coach to have them like pushing it. It's like, maybe we just preserve our second and a half lead and try to win this super important gold medal.
Yeah. To jump over to the road races real quickly, Spencer, it reminded me of Glasgow Worlds. And when I zoomed out, the thing that really stuck with me about both the men's and women's road races was I really want to see more of these races where the riders are out doing something super long and then they're stuck on a city center circuit for maybe 50 miles. There's just something really nice about that format where you have exhausted world tour riders and you have a feature as we did in Paris. Like there was the hill that created the separation where all the attacks went. Similar in Glasgow, we had Mathieu van der Poel's nuclear attack, but this highly technical racing on city center circuits with world tour caliber riders, I think is the future of the sport. I'd love to see more of it.
Yeah, it was a super interesting race. I was supposed to be there, got COVID, did not go. I don't want to show them like, hey guys, I just got COVID from Geraint Thomas. I hope you don't mind. But I was kind of glad I didn't go because the crowds were so crazy. Like I don't think I've ever seen crowds like that. It was packed like 20 deep once they got into that city circuit. I think Niels Paulett had to go to the bathroom and he had to go into a cafe because there was that many people, unless you just want to like drop trout in the circuit and go. Like there was no blind spots. One interesting thing about it, I do think it should be explored more. I saw a lot of chatter of like, oh, should this be a race? Should they have the Paris circuit be a classic? Well, obviously no, because they're not going to shut Paris down for anything that's not the Olympics. The Tour's lucky it gets the Champs-Élysées, and that's pretty contained. They're not going to shut down the heart of Paris for a classic. And frankly, people wouldn't care. Like the only reason they cared in a city that big is because it was the Olympics and the country was overwhelmed. Like it's hard to overstate how big of a deal the Olympics were in France. Even the month leading into it, it's all you saw anywhere, I guess, in addition to the Euros tournament. But the big thing, they keep shrinking these races. Like there was I'm looking at the start list. There was 90 starters, which is half of what a normal pro race is. But the thing is, if you filter for World Tour riders, there was only 60 of them. So a lot of that 90 are guys, you'd say high-level club riders from countries that don't, because like countries will get selections, but they might not have a World Tour or even pro-continental level rider from their country. So like we saw from the breakaway, it was not super high powered, the initial breakaway. So it's really 60 main riders, no teams larger than 4. It makes the racing a lot more exciting. I don't know if I would want it to be the racing all the time, because as Remco Evenepoel showed, if you can be strong and aero and you get a gap, it's just like, amateur racing in the US, like 60 riders would be a pretty big field, but that does happen. And what happens? The strongest riders right off the front rotate through, the strongest rider drops the other strong riders and then solos to the win. And that's exactly what happened here. Remco Evenepoel just destroyed everybody. I was thinking about this, daydreaming about this on the flight back to the States yesterday. If you're anyone else, like let's say Mathieu van der Poel, so you have Remco Evenepoel and Wout van Aert on the same team, like what exactly is your strategy? Because Remco was attacking on the flats. It was kind of strange watching it in real time. I was like, he's not going to get away. What's he doing? But he's just kind of like feeling out the race, softening people up. Wout marks the Van der Poel attack, so Van der Poel can't get away. And also, that was kind of weird because a break didn't have Belgium. Belgium's in a little bit of trouble. They've burned Benoot at that point. They don't have a lot of firepower left because they only have 4 riders to start. How are they going to bridge this gap? Van der Poel says, hey, I'll bridge it for you. So he attacks. Wout goes off the front with him. But then the tricky thing for everyone that isn't Van der Poel and Wout van Aert is because right when they get caught by Mads Pedersen, who missed the move because of a flat tire, Remco Evenepoel counterattacks, and everyone's too tired from Van der Poel's move. They don't follow him. And then if they try to bridge up, as Van der Poel did, Wout van Aert just follows him. So it's really a tough, if you're not Belgian, it's really hard. It's a tough riddle to beat these guys in these races where the start lists are so thin and so small. This wouldn't work like as you see it like Milan San Remo. Like it's just a big group comes to the line or one rider splitting off the front of a big group, because I think people underestimate the importance of having 8 world-class riders on each team setting pace for a few hours. It makes it almost impossible to do what Evenepoel did at this race, even though he does it sometimes at those bigger races. But just I felt bad for anyone who wasn't Belgium. And I think it's going to be tough for anyone who's not Belgium to win these one-off international races in the near future, because Van Aert and Evenepoel, pretty good duo there.
The action that you just described when it was actually unfolding during the race, I found to be really hard to follow, because there was that moment, right?
I was so confused. I didn't know when Remco attacked. I hate to admit this, I didn't know what that was. I was like, is he like bridging back up to a peloton? Like what's going, because no one followed him. I was like, what's happening right here? Why is he just riding off this group? Which group is this? I mean, it was chaotic coverage to be fair.
Yeah, chaotic is one way to describe it. And then, of course, the lack of race radios is something we should discuss. Does it make racing more or less exciting? And then there's the safety question as well. How can you keep the riders safe, as if that's an actual priority within professional cycling? And how can you communicate critical information to them about obstructions on the course, although they do let riders just ride into poles and brick walls and off of cliffs?
Well, I think the lack of radios it works here. And I don't even really know if it makes the racing more. It makes it more chaotic for sure. Like when, like you saw, like Laporte clearly didn't know he was sprinting for third. He thought he got fourth. Attila Valter got fourth, thought he got third. So they clearly didn't know what was happening. It's kind of fun as a one-off, but I don't know how cool that would be all the time. But they do it on a closed circuit, or at least the last, let's say 70K, and they get to pre-ride it before the race. So it's more like skiing where you kind of study the course. So you don't really need to have stuff relayed through to you. Well, Van Aert did just ride into a wall. I don't know if you saw that. It's like on the third lap where it's like, oh man, like that's not a great look. Just, I've ridden this turn 2 times before. I just rode into these barriers, and that's good he wasn't off the front. It's glad he wasn't the card that Belgium played, because that would have been pretty embarrassing. But I think it worked. I think the no radios works in this context. But as you say, if it's not a closed circuit, if it's a regular course, that seems like it'd be pretty dangerous. But one thing I heard over and over again this summer, like at every race, is these races are faster. Everything's like a sprint, because you just have directors saying like every road feature is being relayed up to you, and like you need to sprint, get to the front, get to the front, get to the front. And you hear that the entire race. So you're racing for every corner, every turn, every piece of road furniture. And it makes the races really fast and really chaotic in some respects, because everyone's on the limit. So if you don't have the race radios, do people go slower because they're not racing for every piece of road furniture or corner? It would be the rebuttal, I guess.
I just enjoyed seeing Remco at the end of that race behaving like everyone you've ever seen in any amateur race who has a gap. Right?
Well, I also didn't know if he had a car or not. I just didn't see the car. Yeah. So I was like, oh man, what's he going to do? Is he going to have to fix his flat right here? This is going to be tough.
Yeah. And apparently that's one of the reasons, in addition to all the just logistical reasons you cited for why this race will never happen again on this circuit. The roads are not actually wide enough to have the whole World Tour caravan go through there and adequately support the riders. But yeah, that moment, not even just the moment at the end of the race when he had the flat, but he was looking behind himself constantly, like someone being chased by a Tyrannosaurus Rex, to see if that Tyrannosaurus Rex was back there around the last bend. Right. And if you've ever had the good fortune of being in the lead in an amateur bike race, you know that's something that you're doing constantly. It's not very often that you're just riding away and not looking back, as we see so often at the World Tour level.
You can ask someone the gap, and you don't really trust them. You're like, I don't know. Do they really know? Everything just feels so unknown. I mean, even like Larry Warbus was saying, I was surprised he was pushing so hard at the end of the race. It's like, well, he didn't know. He doesn't know he has that gap. It just knows that he can't see anybody, but they might be coming.
Yeah. Or even better, if you're in a break with one or several other riders and you just tell them, I can see them.
Yeah.
They're catching us. They're about to catch us.
I think I hear it.
Totally.
Can't you hear them? Did you have Valentin Madouas on your bingo card to podium at this race? That was out of nowhere.
Really something special in the era for the French athletes at these Olympics.
Yeah, just crushing. I guess Pauline Ferrand-Prévot is her name. I believe PFP. If you don't want to say that, I guess she like put her whole season around this, and then is now leaving. Now she's peacing out. She's like, I'm done with mountain biking. I'm going to road racing. I did it.
Yeah,
that's kind of fun to see. Laporte finally coming good after months of doing absolutely nothing at Visma. I'm sure Visma was like, well, what's that about, buddy? And Madouas, same thing with FDG, gets 2 riders in the top 10. Is Marc Madio a little bit like, hey guys, like where was that at the tour? Like what's going on here? It did, in all seriousness, it does show the Olympics, the perfect preparation is doing the tour. Remco is the exception to this rule. Doing the tour, like not poorly, but without extreme outlier performances, just kind of like you're in the Peloton, you're rolling along, you're not suffering every day, but you're not in the breakaway every day. Like that's Madouas, the perfect encapsulation of how you do well at the Olympics, using the tour. I'm not saying he used the tour as a training camp, it just kind of acted as a training camp. Evenepoel, it's pretty impressive for him to ride to third and then win the road race. Like that is really unique. I don't know. I have actually newfound respect for the guy after. I thought that Tour de France was really impressive to get third place behind 2 guys that are just simply better than everybody else, but to really wax a lot of good GC riders and then win the Olympic road race as well as the time trial. I'm a little less impressed with this because it's like, well, yeah, if he lines up for time trial, one-off time trial, he's probably going to win. But yeah, good July from Remco Evenepoel.
Yeah, not bad. The footage of him afterwards at the Belgian athlete compound listening to some GABA was quite interesting. I don't know if you happen to catch that, Spencer.
I did not catch that. And I don't like these compounds. They give me they give me the heebie-jeebies. And I'm just like, is this what the Olympics is about? It feels so nationalistic. Like we're going to get 1,000 Belgians in a room and they're rabid and they're all riled up about Belgian pride. It's like, isn't the Olympics about like unity between countries? I found those videos from inside, like especially like the Dutch one. It's like, this feels a little like they're about to invade France. Like this, I don't know if this is what the Olympics was originally about. It isn't about athletes from other countries like coming together and world peace versus just we're going to splinter off on our own thing and just celebrate a third place in the 4x1. And this is now we can have the strength to invade our neighboring country. Like, that's the vibe I got from those parties.
Does Remco's Olympic victory inform your thoughts on whether he can actually win a Tour de France?
No, because it's just that's what he's good at, right? It was very similar to his world championship, the Wollongong one. This was a harder field for sure. But I do think, I mean, if you think about that tour getting third, I saw like Daniel Benson writing about this, where it's like, well, that's impressive, but what's the path forward? Because he lost time in the time trials. He lost time on every course, on every part of the course. Time trial, time bonuses, climbs. So how do you beat those guys? I think you don't beat those guys. And I think this is an underrated strategy in pro cycling, like especially with guys on teams where there's a better rider, like Sepp Kuss. You'd be like, well, how am I ever going to lead? It's like, well, just stick around and someone will have a bad race or someone will get hurt. Like what happens if Tadej gets diarrhea at the 2025 tour and Jonas forgets a feed? You know, you just never know what can happen. So I think especially if there's a race where those guys for some reason aren't at their best or don't show up, he's the third best GC rider in the world, I think. I mean, that was a really good ride from him. So if you're the third best, who's to say that those two, I think Lance kind of spoiled us into thinking that the best rider is always going to be at the best and winning the tour, but it's actually unusual. I mean, think about Chris Froome breaking his wrist in 2014. Like that's the model for Remco.
Yeah, and Pog was very gracious towards Remco's Olympic victory. I do have to wonder, had Pog been there, what outcome might we have seen?
I found myself wondering. I got a lot of like questions about this. I didn't talk about it in my breakdown because I thought like that's a little disrespectful. Like everyone in the race, you know who would have won this? The guy who didn't show up. You guys are all losers. I do think I heard that Tadej Pogacar and Remco Evenepoel good friends. And after one of the stages, you can hear Pogacar say to Remco, he's like, I think it was after the stage that Jonas Vingegaard won in that bike throw. He's like, don't be afraid of him. Like, he's not unbeatable. And like, it was actually really surreal to hear them like gossiping about Jonas, and they clearly are very good friends and had some sort of loose affiliation during that race against Jonas Vingegaard, who is clearly not that well liked on a personal level by his rivals. But if you're doing everything right, you probably shouldn't be that well liked by your rivals if you're a pro bike racer or any athlete. But on your point of, what did you just say? You're talking about, Tadej Pogacar at the Olympics. I think him skipping is incredible. It's an incredible move by him because he probably wouldn't have won. He would have had to have marked both. He would have had to have marked Van der Poel, Wout van Aert, and Remco Evenepoel. Like, that's tough to do. And is he really going to have what it takes physically after like the Giro Tour double? I feel like people have just forgotten that he did that. Like, that's incredible. He's the 8th rider ever to do it. I think he might have been a little on empty and he probably wouldn't have won. And now he can just say, like, he doesn't have to say it, but it's understood. Like, maybe I would have won. I don't know. Maybe, but he probably wouldn't have. So I think it was a good move for him to skip.
And after Carapaz's ride at the Tour, he, of course, was not selected to ride at the Olympics. Should he have been there?
Yeah, I thought that was weird. The whole thing was weird because they select Jonathan. I got a lot of notes on this. So Americans say Navarez. Have you noticed this? If you look at the name, it's not Navarez. It's Narvaez. There's no R at the end. So Jonathan Narvaez. He's very good at the Giro. Very good one-day racer. I thought, it's a little polluted because Tom Pidcock wins Amstel Gold. So I guess he's the best one-day racer on that team. But just from consistency through the spring, I thought Narvaez was maybe their best rider. Gets selected early, like during the Giro. And then you're like, well, what if Richard Carapaz goes to the Tour and wins 5 stages and then doesn't go to the Olympics? That's a little weird. I mean, he had a pretty good Tour. Not at the Olympics. Narvaez falls prey to the fact that it's still kind of an undefeated methodology that if you want to win the Olympics and you want to do well at the Olympics, you have to do the Tour. I think every Olympic road race winner since they started letting professional riders in has completed the Tour de France. Narvaez, I mean, same thing with Bettiol in Tokyo. He looked good, then he didn't look good. Same thing with Narvaez. Looked good, then he didn't look good. I don't know. I think it was a little weird not to have Carapaz there, even though the course probably suited Narvaez. They should have had like a one-off race. It just should have had some other way to settle that. Like, the rider with the most World Tour points at this point goes, and that's it. There's no discussion. There's no subjectivity, or you guys have to do a 100-mile road race in Ecuador and the winner goes. Just something like that. It seems weird because then now Carapaz is like, yeah, I was coming out of the Tour with great form. Maybe I could have won this race. Who knows? And I wasn't even allowed to go. I think it was very strange on Ecuador's part.
And now Carapaz is leading EF at the Vuelta.
Yeah, he didn't. There was a little secret race. I don't know if anyone watched this. San Sebastian, poor San Sebastian, completely forgotten this year with the Tour leading into the Olympics and the Olympics leading into the TDFMs, leading into the Vuelta. Mark Hirschi won a World Tour race for the first time, I believe, since 2019 this weekend at San Sebastian. Julian Alaphilippe second. Just, if you didn't see the race, imagine him off the front with Hirschi looking around in the last K at God knows what. And then he loses the sprint because he's so distracted looking around for something. But I thought Carapaz, as soon as the Tour ended, I was like, well, Carapaz just won San Sebastian. It's a little funny of him not to be there. I thought he would have won that easy. Yeah, now he's going to the Vuelta. I mean, let's just answer these questions you threw out last episode right now, because Carapaz is going to the Vuelta. You could say is their GC leader. I don't think Richard Carapaz is a GC rider anymore. Like, that's just not what he does. Like, I think he's going to have to go to the Vuelta and race for stage wins because I don't think he's kept pace with the rising every year. What it takes to stay at the front group all the time in the GC group gets harder and harder. And Carapaz, very good rider, just is consistently not able to put out the amount of power to wait, especially in the time trials, to stay competitive at the front of Grand Tours. I mean, I'm just here. Let's look at it right now. When's the last time he podiumed a Grand Tour? I believe it was the 2022 Giro d'Italia, when he got beat by Jai Hindley, which now looks worse and worse and worse in retrospect. And then at that Vuelta later in the year, he wins 1, 2, 3 stages all in the last week and a half. And then I think that was him being like, hey, maybe I should just be a stage hunter while I get paid to race for GC that I don't race for anymore. So incredible career move by him. Yeah, I don't think he's going to be racing for GC at the Vuelta. And to answer your question, could he be a GC leader if he had a team around him? I think it's less about the team. If you think about the tour, like what's a team going to do? I think it's more about less the literal interpretation of a team, like the riders around you, and more like the backroom team and the backroom staff. Like clearly, what did we see last year? It was Visma wins all 3 Grand Tours. UAE could win all 3 Grand Tours. We'll talk about the Vuelta in a second. I think it's really becoming clear that you have to have like a really, 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 really knowledgeable and hands-on training staff and nutritional staff, medical staff. That gets a little dicey to talk about, but you just need that all clicking at all cylinders behind the scenes, and you need your team pumping a ton of money into it at all times to even be competitive. And EF does not have that.
You mentioned Hershey in passing there. Hershey from UAE to Tudor Pro Cycling. Are we about to see peak Hershey, or has peak Hershey passed?
Peak Hershey's passed. Do you know what he's getting paid at Tudor?
2 million euros.
I heard 2.5 million.
Okay.
That's a lot of money. That's like what Remco Evenepoel makes. Like, why? Do you know who his agent is? This is even crazier.
Who?
Fabian Cancellara. Do you know who the manager of Tudor Pro Cycling is?
Fabian.
Yeah. So,
so he's getting a cut out of this.
Yeah, he's getting a cut of the contract that he gave out, which is ridiculous. That's a lot.
A pattern here in professional cycling.
That's a lot of money. And I think it would be tempting for Hershey to say, like, well, it's pretty good. The situation I got going on here is pretty nice.
So for people who aren't conversant in this, in the entertainment world, for example, it would be common for a manager to take probably a 20% cut. What cut is an agent taking in professional cycling?
I used to know this. Might be 10% is the customary cut. I think I talked to an agent about this, and they told me, and I've forgotten the specific number. I'd have to go back into my notes. I would just say it's 10%. That's a nice little cut for Fabian to. I mean, how would you not do that if you had the ability to, like, hey, I'm going to sign this guy to this massive contract. Tudor Watches is going to foot the bill, and I'm going to get $250 in my pocket just to walk around Zurich with a nice little wad of cash in my pocket.
Nice watch. Yeah.
And Hershey's actually pretty good. And like, I'm going to pull this up. Is one of the weirdest riders in the Peloton. So you think of him as the 2020 Tour, one of the breakout stars, obviously. Tadej Pogačar was the breakout star. Wins pretty frequently, like one Czech Tour overall and a stage, one Faldrome Classic. That was like an early season French race that no one watches except me and you, Andrew. But they are good races, hard to win. Tour of Luxembourg, overall winner. Like wins a lot of, like, I guess, sub-tier, top-tier races. National champion, road race, Switzerland. His last Grand Tour win before San Sebastian was 2020 La Flèche Wallonne. Yeah, where he wins that and we think he's the new Alaphilippe. This guy's going to win everything. So he is winning and he wins a World Tour race. So maybe it's unfair to say that he's not going to be some breakout star, and he's going to have more freedom now. I just think I think what we see from Mark Hershey is what we're getting from Mark Hershey in the future, which is a pretty good rider that wins a lot more than normal. Like he has 18 pro wins. That's more than double what Alberto Bettiol has. So pretty good rider who wins pretty often, just is not a superstar Galactico. But he's paid like one. A nice place to be.
So where's Alaphilippe going?
I have to imagine he's going to, you'd think Total Energies, right?
That would track. I was thinking about some of the components of the Alaphilippe puzzle. We have Flair, signature facial hair. He's a fun guy. He's pretty heavyweight. Palmares. He's getting later in his career. I wondered if he might go to EF.
No, they don't have the money for that. He's going to be making I heard he got an offer of $2 million a year that he turned down from Cofidis.
Turned down
because he had a better offer.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Andy has a dwell house, so he has like a very refined design sensibility, which I thought probably sings to Jonathan Vaughter.
He has a beautiful home. I would like to know more about where he lives, like where is he training. I feel like we hear a lot about like where a lot of riders live, except the French riders. Like maybe that, I don't know, maybe you have to keep that under wraps for some reason. That
unless you're Thibaut Pinot and you're feeding croissants to your goats. Yeah.
I'm trying to go to Daniel Benson Substack, who had a post on this recently, and I'm getting denied because there's too many people going to the Substack right now. Wow. Good for Benson. Holy smokes. But I think Total Energies is the only team with the money to top a €2 million a year offer. I mean, this is a genius move by Lefevre. Like he's not leaving it on bad terms. He's like, oh, I wanted to keep him. I love him. Just too much money. And then he's not going to be better than he was this year in the future. He's just going to have declining performance. So masterclass from Soudal Quickstep and Patrick Lefevre here. Is Toad Isles maybe a little bit like fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me? Like, is this the Sagan signing all over again?
Very well could be.
I mean, maybe that's unfair because he was good this year and he was good at the Olympics. But man, watching the end of San Sebastian was a little, you're seeing the ceiling right there. It's like he can't outfox Mark Hirschi. And in fact, he was rattled, like really rattled by being off the front with Hirschi and having Leonard Bent at Felt kind of closing that on them, but never really being a threat to close them down. It just seemed like the moment was too big, which is crazy because it's San Sebastian and the moment will never be smaller because the race was overshadowed by multiple other races this year. I was watching that race thinking, maybe San Sebastian's a really boring race. Like I used to like it because it's all these climbs. They're like not super long climbs around the Basque city of San Sebastian. They're like, 4K to 8K to 2K. Like the Jescabel is 8K. Like that's the big climb. But it means the race is so formulaic and you okay, it's going to break up on this one. And then the real move's going to go on this one. And there's going to be 2 or 3 riders sprinting it out for the win. And if Evenepoel's not there blowing it up and blowing your mind with how strong he's come out of a training camp, it's like, this is kind of a boring race. Like maybe my days of being a San Sebastian loyal watcher are over. We should say though, Kevin Vermarka, American on DSM 4th, super good ride. Nielsen Palace, who won this race, I believe during the last Olympic year, 2021, 6th, showing signs of life. And Brandon McNulty back from exile, 10th. And lining up at the Vuelta for UAE. So it's good to see that he's out of his timeout that was imposed on him for reasons that are still unknown to me, but I'm excited to see Brandon McNulty back.
And I'm looking at transfer information here. Is McNulty's contract up this year? Or might we see him go somewhere else?
McNulty is up in 2027. Will we see him go somewhere else though? I guess that's not his contract goes through 2027. I don't think he will stay there through 2027. Where will he go, though? I guess that gets more complicated. You'd think like Red Bull would actually be perfect for him. The odd thing is, you know what team needs Brandon McNulty? UAE needs Brandon McNulty. Like he would have been perfect on that tour team, but they didn't bring him. That's where things start to get funny for me. I don't fully understand why he's always on the outside looking in there. Maybe there's just too many cooks in that kitchen and they don't have room for him at those big races. But I thought I saw a mouse running around or something. Holy smokes. I'm going to freak out if that's true. Oh, man. But
I've caught and released about 10 mice this week. So if you have a mouse saying, don't move to Maine.
I think of Maine as just every house. Like the mice have been there for thousands of years. They're not moving.
They probably have. Yeah.
Same thing with Europe. My Lord, they're everywhere. You can't get rid of them. But the Vuelta a España starts on Saturday, day before your big race, which we'll talk about later, Steamboat Gravel on Sunday. I have to admit, I found myself like panic looking at the start list and the route yesterday on the flight home because I had not paid attention to this at all. And I swear they released the route like it was some terrible time, like the day before New Year's Eve or something. It's like, are you trying to hide your route as well as possible? But it's actually kind of a spicy, it's very Vuelta style where it starts off time trial, short time trial, hilly stage, summit finish stage 4, sprint stage 5, summit finish stage 6, hilly 7, hilly 8, Mountain stage 9, mountain stage 10, hilly stage 11, summit finish stage 12, summit finish stage 13, mountain stage 14, summit finish stage 15, summit finish stage 16, hilly stage 17, hilly stage 18, summit finish stage 19, summit finish stage 20, and then your favorite, this is a tribute to you, Andrew, a final time trial in Madrid.
Perfect.
So it is basically, this is why Primož Roglič has won so many Vuelta Españas, because if he's healthy, I just don't see how anyone, and in these summit finishes in Spain are perfect, like the subalpine ones, he's almost unbeatable on them. I mean, it is a little hot. Like they go to the south. They start in Lisbon in Portugal, which can have a microclimate because it's so close to the ocean. And then they kind of go inland and south through the first 9 stages. Like stage 9 finishes in Granada, which is going to be hot. But then they go north. They go north, like next to the coast. And it's actually not going to be scorching hot on a lot of those stages. I guess, did I miss something when I was away on my super relaxing vacation with my kids about Primož Roglič? Like, have we had any word on his health since he left the tour?
I think that he's just been working on his landing. I think that's kind of been the main thing. But yeah, I mean, we've got 9, it looks like 9 summit finishes, if my counting up to the number 10 is serving me correctly here in this Vuelta. And if he wins the GC, he will tie the record for most Vuelta wins ever, which I know we talked about it last year, but it kind of got lost in the fervor for GC Kuss. I mean, it wasn't just a random, I'm, a high level professional athlete, paid a lot of money to win this race. Why can't I do it? He also wanted to set the record. So it's another motivating factor for him, I'm sure, heading into the race this year.
Yeah, actually, I'd kind of forgotten about this. Yeah, I'm looking at most wins. Roberto Heras, 4. It's shocking to me that I think he had like doping issues for maybe a few of those, but he's still considered the winner, which I kind of like that for record keeping. Don't rewrite what happened. Primož Roglič 3rd or 2nd with 3. So yeah, this would tie him for that. Kind of crazy in retrospect about the Sepp Kuss drama. Like, we are obviously coming from it from an American perspective. And for those who don't know, the Vuelta España is the Tour of Spain, 3-week race in Spain. Sepp Kuss, the American, won last year. But kind of crazy that the team was like, hey, Primož, I know you're going for the record, but you got to let this guy win, who you let get into a breakaway. And that's the reason he has so much time. And you are now stronger than him, but you're not allowed to drop him. That actually is aging a little more oddly than it doesn't sit that amazing. I mean, it's fun that happened, that Sepp won, and it is like a big thank you to him from Primož, who used Sepp in the past and wouldn't have won past Vueltas without his work. But I'm actually shocked that happened now. Like, looking back, and Primož Roglič has to be thinking like, this is now payback time. Like, Daddy Pluga cannot come and save you, Sepp. Like, I am going to absolutely destroy you. Do you think I'm off base with that? Or there's got to be a hint of that.
My read a year later, and Spencer, I don't know if you've caught up on Visma Lisa Bike's documentaries that they released about the Giro and then, of course, the Tour. If I had to describe the culture of this team, which I think, when we had Richard Pluga on, we talked about this. They have a culture of caring about the whole human holistically, which is quite different than what we see in a lot of professional sports settings, and in particular in professional cycling. It's a very emo team. If it were a band, it would be My Bloody Valentine or Radiohead. This is like a shoegaze emo kind of band. And there's just been so much trauma the team has processed in the last year. For example, in the Tour documentary, there, of course, are Wout's wreck earlier in the season, Jonas's wreck, and Jonas talks in detail, which he did this a bit during the Tour, but there was more of a confessional, real world style interview where he talked about when the crash happened and, being unable to take a breath and thinking, I'm going to die. That's what he thought after that wreck. He thought he was dying. And not surprisingly, he has post-traumatic stress and he's really struggling to process that. And then throughout the Tour, his confidence grew. And the way the team took care of him, coupled with some other trauma that I think people may have not taken into account, but Nathan Van Hooijdonk had the massive heart attack in his car, and then had to leave the sport. Well, Nathan Van Hooijdonk was more or less best friends with Wout and with Jonas. And there's just a lot going on inside of that team. And when you think about Primoz, who I don't know personally, but just my read from the outside, it's like maybe a bit more of a jock, you know? And I'm not like, would you disagree with me?
No, I would not at all. No,
yeah,
you're right.
So I'm just not sure. I'm not sure how well he fit in within the culture of the team. And I think that they just wanted him out of the team. I don't think it had anything to do with how Sepp was doing. I think a decision had probably been made within management. This guy's headed out the door. And then I don't think they handled it very well. Personally, I don't think that's cool. He should have had a shot at getting his fourth win. I know that's an unpopular take.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to defend Richard Bluga, I would have liked to have seen open racing, especially since the top three was set. And like Francois Thomaseau, like famous French journalist, put it this way at the last stage of the tour. So if there was two teammates, like if Adam Yates and Tadej Pogačar are 1-2, should Adam Yates not go hard because it's unfair if he passes his teammate? It's a little bit different, I think, on a time trial. But since they had the podium locked up, it's like it would have been kind of fun just to let them go for it. It looked bad, though. The read was bad. And Sepp Kuss is from the United States, which is a big market. Slovenia, probably not a lot of big Slovenian sponsors going to be coming in to sponsor that team. The team didn't have a sponsor at the time, by the way. So that you have to remember that. He did what he had to do. I mean, I think it's kind of a bummer if you're a Primoz fan, but it had to happen that way, especially since, what's that really steep climb? God, I'm blanking on it. It was the ridiculous climb, but where they dropped Sepp and rode away, you're like, that is not a fantastic look that you want to be broadcasting. The weirdest thing about that race, though, in retrospect, Jonas Vingegaard kept taking time by attacking, and then Sepp Kuss and Primoz Roglic weren't allowed to nail him back and then no one else was strong enough or smart enough. Like UAE had Finn Fisher-Black trying to bridge up to him instead of just pulling the peloton with his leader back to Jonas Vingegaard. So like Jonas was just like stealing time in these late attacks that his teammates weren't really sure what to do with. So if he would have won, that would have been weird because sure, Sepp got time from the breakaway, but then his teammates kind of stealing time and he can't chase him down even though he's in the leader's jersey. So yeah, maybe they did what they had to do. I'm excited though for the rematch. I'll just list off the top GC contenders as ranked by Pro Cycling Stats to give us like an overview here. It's Adam Yates, who don't sleep on Adam Yates at this race. Adam Yates, Joao Almeida, both on UAE, Primoz Roglic, Red Bull, Carlos Rodriguez, Ineos, Mikel Landa, Soudal Quickstep, Alexander Vlasov, Red Bull, Ben O'Connor, Decathlon, Enric Mas, Movistar, Schelmoza, Little Trek, and Sepp Kuss, Visma, Lisa Bike, and they have Brandon McNulty, but I don't see a Brandon McNulty overall victory coming. But from that list, Andrew, who do you think wins this Vuelta España?
I'm going to go with Primoz.
I'm going with Primoz too. I think I read I just saw a headline on Cycling News where it's like open Vuelta. It's like, is it open? The guy who's won
I don't think it's that
three
open.
of the last 5 is here. And I think he's going to be flying. I mean, the best thing you can do for the Vuelta, the Primoz Roglic special is crash out of the Tour, show up to the Vuelta with like unbelievable form, and then a route just perfectly designed for you. You know who this route is not designed for? Carlos Rodriguez. Like, it's all like, it's no difficult alpine stages where you can do his wizarding magic like he did on the Jouplan and then win down in Morzine. It's like, this is like, we're going to cruise along and then we're going to rip up an 8K climb at 8% and see who can outsprint everybody at the end. I mean, Almeida, kind of an interesting, that guy was so strong at Suisse, really impressive in the Tour. Adam Yates, really impressive in the Tour, could win. You just think though, like, just close your eyes and I'm like, think about Joao Almeida. What does he struggle with? Like changes of pace. Like, do you remember it was one of the climbs in the Pyrenees at the Tour this year? He was one of the first riders dropped. And then I think he finished 3rd or 4th on the stage, which means he passed everybody. You didn't see him on TV, but if you can't handle changes of pace at the front of a GC group, the Vuelta is probably not for you. So that gives me doubts about Joao Almeida. Adam Yates, like, would you really bankroll him to win uphill duels against Primož Roglic, like explosive uphill duels? Probably not. Even though I don't think it's impossible Adam Yates wins, I just think Roglic has to be considered the favorite. I completely agree with you. One rider to watch out for, Mikel Landa. Kind of curious to see what he can do here. He was really good at the Tour.
Yeah, definitely. What about Ciccone?
Ciccone was good. It's like, yeah, it's this weird thing where Ciccone was good, but he lost time on those guys. Hold on. Every big climb. So like here, stage 14, he got 5th. So he did lose time to Carlos Rodriguez, Evenepoel, Vingegaard, Pogačar. The thing though that's clouding this data is the fact like Adam Yates finishes on the same time as Ciccone, but did a ton of work. Or João Almeida was there working for his team. So he finishes a little behind him, but Ciccone was there just for Ciccone. So Ciccone is good. Yeah, you're right. He is flying right now, but is he better than those guys? Probably not. Even though, man, I'm looking at his Tour results. Holy smokes, he was really good at climbing. Better than you'd think, actually, just from watching the race live. I don't see it. I don't see it.
Do you think we'll see Adam Hansen come out of retirement? I mean, he did ride 20 consecutive Grand Tours and is an advocate for rider safety now, but is this when he comes back?
This good route for him. Big guy, just 9 summit finishes.
Marginal gains, though. He was always an optimizer.
Yeah. Has everyone
43? I mean, that's like puts him roughly in the same ballpark as Geraint Thomas. I think he could come off the bench for this one.
Watch him come back and win a stage. Just like it's like your Victor Campenaerts prediction. Like, why are we talking about Victor Campenaerts at the Tour? Then the man was the man of the Tour. I think Adam Yates has his hands full running I think he's the Riders Union president, the CPA president, I believe.
Yes.
And a very active landlord in the Czech Republic. So he's got a lot on his plate. I'd be shocked if he makes a comeback. He did invent the tiny handlebars. If you watch like Tour Down Under, I think it was even the Tour Down Under pre-warm-up race in like 2012 or something. He had like tiny handlebars, like 38 mils, and everyone's like, what is going on? This guy is out of his mind. He can't turn his bike. Now that's what everybody rides. So Adam Hansen, he knew what was coming before everybody else. Are you excited for this Vuelta?
I'm hyped for this Vuelta. I think the only thing I could be more hyped about is what's going on at the Slopeside Grill at 3:30 p.m. Mountain Time this Thursday.
Yeah, so let's make an announcement. Let's have our legal team. We have 15 white shoe attorneys on retainer. They're here in the office. They're running around with papers. They're handing them to Andrew right now. But do you want to make the announcement, Andrew, about what is happening later this week in Steamboat, Colorado?
I'd love for you to make the announcement, Spencer. Go ahead.
None of us want to be liable.
Well, you know what I can tell you, Spencer. You and we're going to go on a bike ride at 2:00 on Thursday, and I'm meeting you at the Little Toots Park.
Yes.
Is that what it's called? Is that really what
Little
it's called?
Toots Park, downtown Steamboat, Colorado. Andrew and I are meeting up for a shakeout ride prior to his big event, the Steamboat Gravel Race. I need vowels. I'm a vowel guy.
Yeah.
Where are these vowels going? But I think it's like SBT GRVL.
It's the altitude. The vowels just start to drop out.
They can't handle the altitude. But we're going to do a shakeout ride Thursday, Steamboat, Little Toots Park, 2 p.m. And that's all we're going to say. We cannot stop you. We cannot stop you from joining us. It is an open road. So if you ever wanted to see Andrew Vontz ride a bike, it would not be a bad time to swing by.
Yeah. Spencer's going to cut quite a figure out there among the wildflowers on Thursday. So pull up, and then following that ride, we're going to be doing some podcasting. The Slopeside Grill doesn't know that this is going down. So a bit of what used to be called a flash mob. And we'll be out there on the plastic chairs out in there's a field there, I think. And Spencer, are you going to be bringing your Zoom H6, maybe a couple of mics? Like, how's this going to go down?
Yeah. Zoom H6, couple mics, Slopeside Grill, Steamboat. Believe it's up at the ski resort, but we'll figure out how to transport from A to B and everything. But we'll be there around 3:30. If you ever wanted to participate in a Q&A on this podcast, I think I was telling Andrew, describing it as if you want to publicly roast us, give us a piece of your mind, air some grievances, this is your time. And your voice, I think we'll be passing the mic around. Your voice is going to be on the podcast. So if that's appealing to you, and you will be in Steamboat Springs, Colorado on Thursday at 3:30 p.m. at the Slopeside Grill, this would be a great time for you to check that off your bucket list. It's kind of surreal to me. I'm going straight from the Alps to the western slope of Colorado. It doesn't feel real, but it will after the shakeout ride. Also, before we go, I wanted to make sure I mentioned this. Matteo Jorgensen, Olympic road race, coming off of that tour. Holy smokes, that guy's really good. We didn't mention him, but wanted to make sure we give Matteo his flowers. But Andrew, do you want to talk about this event really quick? Just like, let's pretend someone didn't know what this race was. What is this race? I'm not doing it, by the way. I couldn't get in, and we'll leave it at that.
I wouldn't say that I'm doing this race. I'd say that I'm going to Steamboat to participate in a bike ride. That's what's happening for me at this event.
Very gravel of you.
Yeah, I won't be wearing a kerchief or waxing my mustache. I don't currently have one. I'm just going out there to ride and meet up with some people. And yeah, I think that this has become quite a popular ride the past couple of years, so popular that the vowels have flown off of the name. And some of the friends that I'm meeting up with there have participated in this event before. They say it's awesome. I just inherently, I'm not a huge fan of big gravel or things like you have to go stand in a pen for an hour before you do a bike ride for like an hour at 5 in the morning.
One of my least favorite experiences.
Yeah, especially when it's like 5 in the morning for an hour before you ride. You got to stand in a pen, right?
Yeah, just be stressed in this pen with a bunch of random people.
Yeah,
and no one's going to talk to you. Everyone's focused.
Yeah, everyone's focused.
They all have to take a poop.
Yeah, and they have hopefully that this is a great event, but if the past is the best predictor of future results, you've been to bike races. If you're listening to this, there are 4,000 people in this race. What are they going to have? Like 8 porta potties?
Yep. It's like this should be on the LSAT or something.
Yeah.
There's 4,000 people at the race. There's 4 porta potties. How dirty will those porta potties be by the end of the race? It is supposed to be like one of the best SBT gravel, however you want to spell that, it is supposed to be really good. They're not a sponsor of this podcast. I've been an admirer of this race from afar. Always wanted to do it. Falls during the Vuelta. It gets a little bit tough for me doing the newsletter and a podcast every day during the race, trying to do it. And also, you might think, wow, this sounds like a great event. Gravel race up in Steamboat. I'd love to do that. It's like impossible to get into. Like it sells out so fast because I guess it is very good, known to be good. And you just did the lottery, right, Andrew, and then got in?
Yeah, I did the lottery, and I think part of why I'm approaching this is more of a ride. Spencer, I know you probably don't think of yourself as living at altitude, but you do live at altitude. I live at sea level. I'm parachuting in to 7,000 to 9,000 feet of altitude, and I'm going to be there for a couple of days beforehand. So I'm just there to have a nice time, go on that bike ride with you Thursday, 2 p.m. at Little Toots Park. It's a great name. And then do some podcasting and meet some people.
And it does smell like a bunch of Little Toots because it's right next to a sulfur river. So maybe that's where the name comes from. I don't know. But I'm excited. It is I think it appeals to me because I was talking to someone actually that lives in Basel, Switzerland, Kevin Selker, who did like the first edition of this race on a road bike, probably like 25 millimeter tires, did it successfully, but it's like an actual gravel race. I think they do have they take you off road. Sometimes you go through a field that changes all the time. A lot of times the landowners don't want them on that anymore, so they have to switch it up. But it's a lot of like road and gravel. It's like an actual gravel race. Not a lot of silly oh, now you're on a rocky single track that we built just for this. It's just like pure good gravel riding. A lot of people up there having fun. I'm excited to see what it's all about. And unfortunately, just crazy that it just didn't work out for me to be in it. I'm sure like Daddy, I could have won. Who knows? But we'll never know.
We might find out. It's never too late. The event hasn't happened yet.
Andrew was like, we could probably get you in. I was like, no, I just wanted to say that I wanted to do it. I didn't actually want to do it. Now you're calling me out. How long is the one that you're doing?
I'm a sprint distance specialist at this point.
But it's still pretty long, right? I'm looking here, 2024 courses. They don't really tell you. Have you noticed this about all these gravel races?
Yeah, I believe I'm doing the red course.
So the black course looks like it's like over 120 miles, which is really long when you have tons of climbing in the mountains. Red is probably, they have the GPX valves up. Crazy. That's rare for a gravel race to actually tell you what the course is going to be before it happens. It's probably like 70 miles or something, right?
I think it's 55 miles. 50? Sorry, I just pulled up the website, and the first thing I saw was like 4,000 people in pens riding out of town.
I saw that too. God. 56 miles, 4,000 feet of elevation gain. That is insane to me. Start time 6:54 a.m. Just a shame I won't be able to do this. But
yeah, you're going to be there. I think that if you're listening and you work for SBT Gravel, I think there's a workaround. We can probably. I'm sure there's Wi-Fi or
this
cell
race is going to
service.
Finish before the TV coverage starts. It starts so early.
Yeah, actually, you're probably right. I don't think you're going to have it. You're not going to have any problem. You're welcome to come back to the Airbnb. We can observe you in action, producing the newsletter. That'd be incredible. Get it on social media.
Live stream.
Really elevate your profile over at Hardway Pod on Instagram.
Watch a man sit in a Niçois studio apartment, and make content. I should have live streamed that. But
wow, sorry, I'm looking at the FAQ. Will there be bathrooms at the start finish? Yes, there will be plentiful porta potties for all of your race morning needs. I'm going to fact check this claim. What does that mean?
I don't know about the liability on that. That sounds like a bold. They didn't have legal go through that, but 56 miles, 4,000 to climb. That's a pretty big ride. And then
that's a big ride. I think that's probably
riding
3.5 hours. Yeah.
Gotten out of control. Yeah. 3.5 hours. That's like a good time and distance for a brisk race ride with some friends. The course looks good. I'm looking at the course. Looks good. Some road climbs, gravel descents. That's the combo you want. Come back on the town on the old Steamboat Springs road race finish route. I think everyone remembers that. But thank you, Andrew. We'll let you go. You have industries to disrupt, people to talk to, bikes to pack, I'm sure, travel days to make. Somehow it's more travel time to get from Maine to Colorado than like high Alps back to Colorado. So I wish you luck, and we will talk soon on Thursday. Be there if you want to be there.
See you Thursday, 2 p.m., Little Toots Park.
All right. Good luck. Bye.